Well, hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. We're getting ready to record Mike in the Midwest episode number 94. So stand by and hang out for the next 30 minutes. I'm going to try to keep it to 30 minutes from now on. We'll see if we can. Let my whistle with a little Coke Zero and let's get cracking. All right. Shout out to everybody watching live on YouTube. Hello. All right, let's do this. Here we go. Shout out to SmackDown Outdoors. Best name ever up in Minnesota. It's a rainy one down here in St. Louis. Didn't get the bad storms like they kept telling us, but it's raining a lot. Hello, Margie and Herschel. Here we go. So if you hear the thunder rolling in the background, that's what it is. It's not my stomach. I already had lunch. Here we go. Well, hey, everybody. Happy. Let's try that again. Let's just delete that since we're 2 seconds in and I've already screwed up. Let's try that again. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 94 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast here for the great patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. We're recording the show here live in the Be Our Guest podcast studios in stormy St. Peters, Missouri on Wednesday, April 13th, 2022. How you doing? Wherever you're listening to this show, you might not be listening on Wednesday. You may not even be listening to this show in April, but wherever you're listening and whenever you're listening, I hope you're doing well. Hope you have a nice summer breeze, spring breeze, wherever you are. And like I said, you're doing great. Thanks so much for your support of the show. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon. It means a lot. It lets us put out the big show 3 to 4 times a week, as I say on the ad reads at the top and the bottom of each episode of the Be Our Guest podcast. And we try to get 4 shows out a week when we can. I don't know if we're going to have a Sunday show this Sunday night because obviously it is Easter Sunday. On last count, I think we have 16 people coming to the house for Easter dinner. So we will see. We might, if we have people scoot out here on time. We might not if everybody hangs out. I'm not going to chase people out. But we'll have lots of ham and potatoes and deviled eggs. Isn't it ironic that we have deviled eggs on Easter Sunday? Kind of crazy if you think about it. But yeah, so we'll see on this Sunday night. But if not, we will do one next Sunday night. But say we still could. I'm not saying we won't because I love doing those. I love opening up the phone lines. If you were with us last Sunday night, you heard the call from Eric in Connecticut because this is why I love call-in shows. He called in to tell us we were talking about the refurbishment that's upcoming. It says it's an extensive refurbishment coming to Narcoossee's at the Grand Floridian. And he talked about one time that him and his buddies walked into I think it was into Narcoossee's or Citrico's, one of the restaurants, fancy restaurants at the Grand. They didn't know, but the restaurant was closed and they were having a staff meeting in the corner of the restaurant. All the waiters, waitresses, servers, bussers, everybody, staff meeting going on. They didn't know it. They were tired. They were exhausted. They sat down at a table, kind of seated themselves. And apparently the chefs felt sorry for their ragged crew there and brought them out Caesar salads and water and fed them. Like the transient Disney fans that they were. And so how about that? I mean, they even got Caesar salads at a deluxe at a signature restaurant. I mean, come on now. That was probably $25 worth of salad a person. And the free water at a signature restaurant is probably $5. Just kidding. Anyways, hope you're doing well. Let's get to talking about what's going on here at the Be Our Guest podcast studios. If you hear a little thunder in the background or if all of a sudden I disappear, it is a stormy day here in St. Charles County in Missouri, right out to the west of St. Louis. Today, we were projected to have really hairy storms. I mean, some bad thunderstorms, tornadoes. Last night we went to bed. I mean, the weathermen were all over this, and I give them credit. Their job number one is to keep everybody safe. I mean, I truly believe that. I know people give weathermen and weather forecasters, women, because we have lots of female weather forecasters here in St. Louis. The weather people who bring us the weather, their job number one is to keep us all safe, right? And keep us informed. And so we had a projection of last night when I went to bed. I was like, and the National Weather Service, which, I mean, if you don't even watch your local CBS, ABC, Fox, whatever, NBC, because I watch them all, Weather Channel. The National Weather Service Twitter account, that's the one I always kind of count on because they're always kind of the most conservative. If they say something's going to be bad, like a snowstorm or a thunderstorm or something like that, I'm like, okay, we got to get serious. If national, because they don't have like a dog in the fight, they're not trying for ratings. And the National Weather Service was putting out that, okay, we might have straight line winds of 90 miles in excess of 90 miles an hour, a high probability of tornadoes, baseball sized hail. Like when they start saying that kind of stuff, you're like, ooh, probably don't want to be outside tomorrow walking the dog. So yeah, they were expecting all that. Now, the reason it was going to be a big deal here in St. Louis today is that they projected these storms to come through about the time we're recording right now. They said between like noon and 5 o'clock. So likely these storms would have hit the metropolitan area of St. Louis around the PM commute time. And mostly the most important thing was around kind of dismissal time for all the schools. So a lot of schools here in St. Louis, for one of the very first times, had early dismissal because of the probability of thunderstorms. And we've never really had that here in St. Louis. My wife's school, she's fired up. They did not get out early. They stayed, but the thing was, it never did materialize because we got some thunderstorms this morning, which took all the energy out of the atmosphere because you got to have a lot of heat. You got to have a lot of sunshine. We didn't get that this morning, so we didn't get the big boomers this afternoon. We just got regular old garden variety thunderstorms right now. But they were going to keep my wife later, and they were just going to hold the kids until the storms passed through. So she was not, she was mad. My wife was mad when she went to school this morning. So anyway, just regular old thunderstorms. But yeah, shout out to all the weather people who kept us safe. They were expecting these huge storms, didn't get them. I know tonight they're going to get killed on social media. Give them a break, man. I mean, come on. They kept everybody safe. Like nobody got hurt. That's one of those things. I hate to see that. I know they were wrong, but they were wrong in the right way. Like if they wouldn't have said anything and tornadoes would have ripped through St. Charles County, that would have been horrible. And like people weren't prepared. Like people were prepared this time at least, and nothing happened. I know if you cry wolf too many times, people are not going to listen in the future. So it is kind of a delicate balance to walk. But yeah, shout out to the weather people. Cause you know, I think I've said this here on the show because the show's kind of about my story, and obviously it's called Mike in the Midwest. If I was not a teacher and I was not a travel agent, or a baseball player, one of the things I would have absolutely loved to have done was to be a weather person. I am enthralled by weather. I love it. Whenever there's a thunderstorm, I'm glued to the window constantly. For example, today, instead of working here in the studios where I don't really have a window to look out because I have this big spaceship Earth backdrop behind me that covers the window that's right next to my desk, which I put my desk here because there's a great big window next to it, but then I got the backdrop and it covers it. So, oh well. So instead, I worked at the kitchen table today a lot upstairs on my MacBook, and that allowed me to look out our deck, which unfortunately faces east. I wish it faced west, but our back of our house faces east. And so I could see, over our lake and our subdivision and see the rains and all that stuff and see the sky and the lightning. So yeah, I'm one of those people that I love watching weather and I love learning about weather, and I'm a nerd. I follow hashtag STLWX, which is the St. Louis weather hashtag. I follow all the weather people in our town and all that stuff. I don't know if you do that as well. Are you an amateur weather person? Let me know. Patreon.com/BRGuys podcast. I know there's a lot of us out there. I love it. The movie Twister, if it's on, can't turn it off. I told Pam because last night they were hyping this storm so bad. And we were sitting there, it was about 8 o'clock. Now it's probably about 9 o'clock. We had gotten home. We had an event for Mallory's cheerleading we were meeting some of the other parents of the high school cheerleaders. And so we got home from that and we flipped on the news. And of course, like every 10 minutes, the story was these impending storms. And so I told her, I was like, we need to turn this off and we need to watch Twister right now. Got to watch Twister. She's like, you are nuts. Like, we do not need to watch Twister right now. I mean, that movie is awesome. Even though that movie is like talk about bad CG, but I love that movie. Anyways, that's what's going on here. We've survived the garden variety thunderstorms today, and everything else is going well. We've got some shows for you. Ricky was out this week. She was not on the podcast. She is in Nashville for some training for work. I think she went down for the Country Music Awards or something. Maybe she was nominated and didn't tell us. Let's see. I'll be heading down to Walt Disney World here in about 10, 11, 12 days. Actually, no, sorry. It's 2 weeks from today. It's on a Thursday, for the summit for Mallory's cheerleading squad, Platinum Athletics. We'll be down there. I get to hang out a little bit longer, with Pam Forrester at the end of the thing to, I don't know, we're going to tour Epcot and maybe ride a roller coaster at the end, from what I've been told. So we'll have lots of coverage here for you guys. You guys will see it first. I promise you. I'll post it here so you find out all the stuff about rockets and raccoons and trees. And I am Groot. And I still got to watch that movie. I'm going to watch it before I go down. So anyway, that's what's happening here. And we have lots of feedback from last week's show. I love feedback. So if you have feedback on today's show or any other topic that we've talked about before, or a topic you would like me to talk about, I would love that. If you want me to talk about a topic next week, please let me know. Patreon.com/BeOurGuestPodcast. Or you can always hit me up on the social media. Say, Mike, how about a show on this topic? Just at BeOurGuestMike, Twitter, Instagram. That'd be great. Or you can always email me. It's pretty easy to remember the email, mike@beourguestpodcast.com. I'm not hard to get a hold of. Pretty simple. All right, last week we talked about educational toys from the 80s, and we got lots of feedback. I didn't think we'd get any last week, to be honest, and we got a lot. So let's hit this and talk about it. So let's see what we got. Len Wilcox, my good buddy out in Maryland with the Michigan State Sparty is his avatar. He says, my favorite educational toys growing up were a microscope and a telescope. Not very fancy sounding, but I'm pretty old. I love the spirograph. I have written programs to generate those kind of patterns. We had water rockets that were like your water rings. We recently bought a subscription to Highlights for our 6-year-old grandchild. I didn't even know Highlights was still around. That makes me feel great that Highlights has survived all this time. It's still around in 2022. Is it still a paper version? I guess it is if you're getting it for a 6-year-old, even though I guess probably 6-year-olds have smartphones at this point. Who knows? Water rock, yes, spirographs. God, they were so fun. And I would love to see like a program that would make sense. That it would probably be pretty basic to make a program that makes those kind of spirograph designs, because I guess it would just be a repeating pattern that kind of, because like the paper just kind of shifts. So maybe just like ovals where I guess the grid, like the XY axis might shift just slightly. Yeah, that's interesting. That's why I love this show. I love talking to you guys. And I'm old. Len, we're brothers. I love it. And microscopes and telescopes, you're speaking my language. Also, another one I totally forgot to mention last week. That's why I love talking about this stuff. And I hope you guys enjoy these shows, because it's just me rambling for 30, 40 minutes. And I feel terrible. I know this isn't a great show, but it's just me talking about stuff. So another thing, because the microscope and telescope made me think about this. One thing that I had a cheap one of, but I always wanted the big one. And I always saw, I got it from my grandparents. And every Sunday we'd go to church. And after church, we'd go to my grandparents' house and have lunch at noon at their house. And then we'd always watch football. Like we'd watch like the first half of the football game. Then we'd go back to our house. One of the things that I always wanted a big one of, but I had a small one of, and it stayed over at grandma's, was now again, you got to be older. Radio Shack had these, and they were these science kits. They were like 99-in-1 science kits, where basically you had like wires and you would wire up things to like light up light bulbs or set off burglar alarms or all kinds of those. But it was just basically kind of like a beginner's electronics kit, and you would just attach wires from here to there to everywhere, and you could make things happen. And I had like a small one of those, but like they had like a 300-in-1. I had like probably like a 12-in-1 or something. It was like an introductory, but I mean, you would see those at Radio Shack and in Christmas season. It's like, oh, I need that. So very cool. Francesca Spathis, thank you for being a patron. I love having you here. Thank you so very much for your support. She says, I have never solved the Rubik's Cube. Join the crowd. Me neither. I'm giving you a ding there from the Be Our Guest podcast. Although I've had it since I was a kid. Apparently my husband has solved it, but he has no proof and can't replicate it. I'm giving him the sad trombone because I think he's lying. Just kidding. I also grew up in the 80s, and the educational toy that I had was called Speak and Spell, a very primitive kitty laptop. My daughter just got a spirograph for Christmas this year, so it's still sold. She loves it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we still have highlights. We still have spirographs. There is still hope in the world. There's still hope in the world, people. We can make it. And I never had a speak and spell, but my younger sister did. She did. She was 4 years younger than me. She had a speak and spell. Was that the one? Because she had two of them. So it was like in a real heavy plastic thing, and it had like a handle at the top, as I recall. Now like I said, I think she had two. One was orange, and I think one was yellow and blue. God, isn't that weird how you remember those things? I'm 48, so that was over 40 years ago. But I remember that thing took a beating. And I remember I had a calculator called Mr. Professor, and it was like a calculator that had like a big like he had a big mustache. That's crazy. I love this stuff. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad spirographs are still sold. I might have to go to Target tonight. Okay. Let's see here. Wait. Why can't I like her post? Okay. We'll have to hit cancel. Okay. There. No, I can't like it. I don't know. All right. Michelle's here from South Florida. She says, fun topic. You just sent me down a rabbit hole looking for a talking robot toy that one of my friends had that I was super envious of. I'm not exactly sure which one it was, but I found a bunch from the late 70s and early 80s. There was one I think it was called Alpha because my cousin had it. And again, speaking of envious, I was envious. He had Alpha something. I think it was Alpha. And I never had one of those. And I was so jealous. She says, also love the Rubik's Cube. I got a book at the fair with instructions on how to solve it, and I loved following the step by step to get it done. When I was around 10 years old, I got a chemistry set for Christmas that I loved. God, see, again, I would have loved to have that too. I'd probably blown up the house. Thanks for the walk down memory lane. I also love the water game, Spirograph, and Simon. Do, 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 do. And I was one of the kids with a knockoff Trapper Keeper. I think it had dogs on the cover. Oh my God, Trapper Keepers. I talked about that last week. I mean, that was the status symbol of elementary school. You just rocked around like a Lamborghini or some baseball scene. It was the bomb. Oh, I would have a Trapper. I'm telling you, I did try to get a Trapper Keeper last summer when they put them back out at Walmart. Could never find one. And then I thought, what am I going to do with a Trapper Keeper now? Because everything I do is digital. I don't do anything on paper. But I don't care. I would just carry it around. I'd put it in my computer bag and just take it out when I'm like traveling, like on an airplane. Like that cat's got a Trapper Keeper. How cool is that? Not really, but it'd be fun for me. Trisha Hellwig, I believe she's up in Wisconsin. Hey, Trisha, thanks for being here. Sure appreciate it. I'm a decade younger than the record player, but I did have the tape player with the books on tape. I remember flipping it over and being able to record my own story on Side B. Yes, I totally forgot about that. Yes, I do now. This is why I love this. And we need to talk about this kind of stuff more often. That is absolutely true. I remember Side B was blank. You record your own story. And oh man, wouldn't that be gold if you could find those tapes and go back and hear yourself from when you were like 7 recording them? Oh, that'd be so funny. That'd be so great. My favorite art toy was the art spinner where you would put a piece of paper on a plate and when it turned on would spin around. You'd then drip paint on it and create spiral paintings. Okay, let me stop right there because I think now I never had that. But did they not? And maybe this was just around here, but I think they had something like that, like at the county or the city fairs, like at our Valley of Flowers fair, which I've talked about here on the show. I want to say that they had like a booth where you can make things just like that, where maybe they were shirts, maybe there was art projects. But yeah, it was the same thing. It was like a plate that spun and you put paint in the middle, and it was just like it looked kind of like a star, like the paint just kind of splattered out in all directions, and it was beautiful. Yeah, it's kind of like a spirograph, but more like abstract. Yeah, I didn't know they had like home versions. That sounds cool. Wonder if they still have that. That sounds more messy. It's probably why I never had one because my wife or my mom would probably not want that. She continues, I got to relive my childhood recently. My daughter has a subscription to Kiwi Crate, and we built our own art spinner. She loved building the motor and trying different speeds to paint. Sadly, though, I never owned an easy bake oven. Oh my gosh. Okay, Crate, I'd heard on podcasts. Okay, it was an advertiser, probably a show that I listened to. Man, I would say 7 or 8 years ago. So I'm glad that's still around. I love that idea. You get the components, you build the toy, then you play with the toy. But you can see how it's built, the mechanics. That's a very great idea. Easy bake ovens. My sister had one, again, 4 years younger than me. Gross food back then. We got one for Paige, still gross food. She's 25. When she used it for she probably made 10 things in it in the history of the time we had it. And then it sat on, in a closet forever. Mallory had one. She probably made 3 things in it, and then that was it. So, I mean, what can you really make with a big light bulb? Not a lot, but it was fun. It was fun. You could burn yourself at least. I mean, that's about it. But yeah, easy bake oven. I always tried to, and the thing was, as a dad, you had to try to eat the cakes, even if they were undercooked. It was basically just like eating warm batter, which I mean, I guess there's nothing wrong with that. All right, Dennis Keithley, my good buddy, Blues fan down in Texas, says, I remember all those toys you mentioned. We had toys that never left Grandpa and Grandma's house, too. I never solved the Rubik's Cube either. Yes, we have a club going. Here we go. As for Trapper Keepers, I always remember those things being awesome at the beginning of the school year and then immediately going to the trash can at the end after all the folders fell apart from getting overstuffed during the school year and the binding of the keeper itself starting to split. That is so true. That is so true. They would get destroyed. I mean, because it was just you used stuff back then. And Dennis was probably like me. I was not careful with my school supplies. I destroyed school supplies because you always got new ones, right? At the next year. That never stopped me from wanting another one at the beginning of the next year. Exactly. My favorite 80s toy was the model rocket you could get from the hobby store, put together, paint, and then launch. My brothers and I would work on these models together, and then my dad would take us to a nearby park on the weekends to launch them. We'd always chase after them after they deployed their parachutes as they fell back to the ground. Thanks for another good show, Mike. Thank you, Dennis. Thanks for being here. It really does mean a lot. I appreciate having you here. This is going to tie in to today's topic here in just a second, Dennis. So stand by. Your story about your rockets. Pretty cool. Jennifer Perry, thanks for being here. I love having you as a patron. She says, thanks for another fun walk down memory lane. I played with Light Bright and we had a subscription to Highlights. Goofus and Galliant. That was their name. She says they were my favorite. Those are those cartoon guys. The educational 80s toys I liked were Speak and Spell and Legos. Yes, Legos. It's ironic that you brought up Trapper Keepers because I recently ordered one from mead.com for my best friend's birthday. Of course, Trapper Keepers were a status symbol for us in grade school. As always, thanks for your entertaining content. Thank you, Jennifer. And guess who's going to mead.com tonight? Again, let me repeat, do not need one. Do everything digital. Probably will have one by the weekend. That'll be my Easter gift. I won't get an Easter basket. I'll get an Easter Trapper Keeper this year. Oh my God, you guys empower me. Finally, Jonathan Humphrey. Thanks for being here, Jonathan. I sure appreciate your support. The educational game I remember the most was Oregon Trail. Every school computer has those floppy disks. Nothing like a good deer hunt before dying of dysentery. Dysentery. I can never say that word, even though I taught elementary school for 17 years. You will be happy to hear the cards were well represented at Walt Disney World on opening day. There were Cardinal shirts and jerseys everywhere. Yes, Cardinal Nation was out in full force last Thursday. I like to hear that. That makes me happy. Okay, here's the thing about Oregon Trail as a teacher. And we're going to talk about some of my favorite teaching stories today. So this is a good transition. Jonathan, you put the ball on the tee, and here we go into today's topic. I love this. So I don't know if you guys know, some people are new to the show. Some people have been with us for, the 14 plus years of the run of the show where I've kind of talked about, because remember, for most of the show, I was a teacher while I was doing the podcast. I've only been podcasting and working as a travel agent full-time since 2017. So the show started in 2008. So during all those years, I was teaching and then coming home and doing the show. So I have lots of, this happened today kind of days on the podcast. But I taught second grade my first year, and I taught sixth grade next door to my wife, my now wife, for years and years. 1 year I taught fifth grade, and then for the last 7 years I taught gifted education. And we did other kinds of stuff in there. But you mentioned Oregon Trail, and I just remember that we had a computer lab that it had. Now again, this was a game from the 80s, right? Somehow when I was teaching, and it wasn't like at the beginning of my teaching, because I started teaching in 1999. So it wasn't towards the beginning of my teaching. It was somewhere in the middle. I think they must have put some kind of an emulator on our machines because we had Macs. Our school district was always all Macs. And I think they put an emulator on our machines where they had an Oregon Trail program that ran through emulation, because obviously it was very old. And the kids loved it. I mean, I was like, this game is so old. You don't even understand. Like, they thought it was new. I'm like, this game is like from when I was in school. And they're like, whatever. But the thing was, they wouldn't read anything. They just wanted to shoot the buffalo. Like, wasn't that a part of it? Like, they just want to do like the target shooting. That was it. Or the deer. I think that's what you're saying. Nothing like good deer hunt. I was like, if you want to play the game, you got to do the problem solving part. So then I was thinking, when I was in sixth grade, when I was in fourth grade, All I would have done was shot the buffalo. That's when you know you're like, oh my God, I've turned into I'm the teacher. That's the funniest thing is when you become a teacher, and I know we have teachers in our audience, probably some teachers here on Patreon, is that there are so many days where you just if you really kind of look at the meta of the whole thing, you don't even realize that like you are now the teacher. You're no longer the kid. Because I still like when I became a teacher, I was 26 and I was teaching 12-year-olds. So I mean, there was a big age difference, but not really. I mean, I still Pam always accuses me because I'll laugh at stuff or snicker at stuff and make jokes. And she's like, you're still 12. Like, not like quit. Like, because I just have like I just like to have fun in life. I like to laugh at stuff. I like to have a good time. And so I led my class obviously very professionally because that was my role and I wanted to be the best teacher I could because it's super important. That's an important year for kids. You know, it's very very important. 6th grade I think was probably one of the most important years in school, K through 12. And I really wanted to always do a good job, but I mean there were a couple days where I just, in front of the class I'm like, how did I get here? Like how did I become Mr. Rallman and not Mike sitting in 6th grade. It was bizarre to me. But anyway, today I thought I'd talk about some of my favorite memories that I don't think I've ever shared on the show or obviously here on Patreon. Because I was thinking about this because, if you're a teacher, and God bless you if you are this year, because I know it's been hard. Um, just a little background. If you're not in education, just to let you know what our teacher friends are going through, in a quick 3-minute recap. Obviously, a lot of schools have been using remote learning over the past, say, year and a half, 2 years. And this year, the kids came back and they were super excited to come back to in-person learning. And in my opinion, that's where kids should be because I think at least 50% of schooling is the social aspect of school. I don't think it's always um, reading, writing, and arithmetic, which I think that is the core. I mean, I am hugely old school in that sense that has to be the base of what school is. Like if you don't walk out of there with a strong knowledge base of arithmetic, of how to read fluently at grade level or above grade level, and know civics, know the history of your country, know your responsibility as a citizen of your country. Like what are your rights? What are your responsibilities in our country? Like how does the government work and what is your relationship to that government? How do you function within the government? How do you work within your community? I don't think schools teach that. And I know they don't teach that enough in our district, not where I live, but where I used to teach. I used to fight that all the time because as our kids became just a quick little rant, but as our kids where I used to teach became lower and lower when it came to math scores and reading scores, we abandoned social studies and science education because they said just teach math and just teach reading all day long, which I get because those are two hugely important skills. But it's horrible in a sense because our kids knew nothing of United States history. They knew nothing of civics. They knew nothing of basic scientific concepts as well. The scientific method, how to problem solve through science, how to go at things, and that stuff I think is just as important as reading. But of course, if you can't read, you really can't learn social studies because you can't read about it. I get that, and that was an argument. But I think that I was trying to always teach reading through text that was social studies based. So instead of reading a book about, some goofy rabbit or something this time of the year, we might try to find a text, some kind of historical fiction about that was based in some sort of historical time period in United States history that led to a discussion on what the role of the character was within the society. What did this person have? What were their rights? What were their responsibilities? How could they have changed this? Stuff like that. So anyway, that's just my little rant. I hope teachers, I respect everybody's opinion, but I want what's best for the kids. And I always felt that was the best. And I just hate that kids now, even high schoolers, sometimes, if you say certain dates, you say certain names, you say certain locations, they have no idea what you're talking about. It's just like maybe you don't need to know those things, but I think it's a well-rounded education if you do know certain things within our context of our country, just so that you know that, so that you can be informed. Anyway, let's get to the fun stuff. Okay, so I told you my first year. Well, let's get back to Dennis's story. He talked about the rockets, and I think he was talking about these Estes rockets. Okay, so if you don't know what I'm talking about by Estes rockets, Dennis described them very well. Basically, they're rocket kits. And you get these things and you can get them. I mean, they come from super simple and super cheap to, I mean, and you buy these at hobby stores, but you can get gigantic ones. I mean, you can get them, they can be like 3 feet tall. They're crazy. So one summer, this was probably about halfway through my teaching career. I was teaching sixth grade at the time. And my buddy Dave, who I'm still friends with, he taught fifth grade across the hall. We went to space camp together. My first time when I went to space camp as a teacher before I taught there, we went to space camp that summer together. Um, and we've done crazy stuff together. He was in my wedding, groomsman, just great friend. Um, we taught summer school together for the gifted program. We did a gifted summer school program over at the Gifted Center. And so we taught there for like 6 weeks over the summer. And the class that we taught together was rocket building. And so we had a budget so we could buy all these Estes rockets. And so we taught, we taught math concepts, we taught science concepts during the day, but each day in the afternoons after lunch, the kids would get to work on building and like Dennis said, like painting and making their rockets look really cool. And then on the last day of that rotation, because we only had them for a week, and then they would rotate to another class. So we had them for like 4 days. And so on the fourth day, we'd go out into the field across the street at the Civic Center where we taught, and we'd have a rocket launch, and it was the coolest thing ever. And the rockets, because these rockets, they you put these little things that kind of look like little bullets in the bottom, and you put the little, they're called alligator plugs on the little two little metal posts, and you five, and they got a little firing trigger, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You hit the thing, and they make the noise when they blast off the launch pad, and they go up and they go really high. And like Dennis also said, the parachute pops out at the top if you packed it correctly, if you paid attention in class, and it floats down and you pick up the parts and everybody cheers and screams and runs, and it's summer school and it's fun. And then we go have popsicles and they go home. It was fun. I'm telling you what, that was one of those things that I remember. I was teaching with one of my great friends. Dave is one of my best friends from all time. Like, we taught together for probably over 10 years. Just a solid guy, one of the best teachers I've ever met. Still teaching. He's teaching actually in the district I live in now, where Mallory goes. Outstanding teacher. I mean, if your kids were to have him, great teacher. Great guy though too. And it was just fun being able to teach summer school with with a good buddy, and get to teach rocketry. I mean, model rocketry. That was fun because I was like a kid. I mean, like, I got to buy these rockets. I got to shoot them off. The kids made them, but it was fun watching their creativity and how they designed them and how they colored them and painted them. And there's nothing like watching, especially because we taught in a very underprivileged school district here in Ferguson, Missouri. I mean, the kids didn't have a lot. They didn't get to do these kind of things very often. So when you would see the excitement when that rocket they built went 500 feet in the air, I mean, they would bug out. And I got excited every time. It was so cool. So that was one of my favorite memories, was, again, shooting off the rockets at gifted camp. Now, let me tell you here's a funny story that I love looking back. Okay, this one involves Dave too. This was my very first year of teaching. This year actually I wasn't even a full-time teacher at this point. So I graduated in January with my teaching certificate because of how like my credits worked. And so I graduated in January and I got a job. So my graduation at University of Missouri was on a Sunday, but I had lined up where I started teaching on a Monday. The next day, I filled in to a second grade class for the rest of the year. So I took over this classroom the day after my graduation, and I had the classroom for the rest of the year. Now, how do I do that? Because it was January. Sorry about the C's. But what happened was, and this is what I was told later on, like somebody told me this like in February. The reason I got this job, because I remember, like, I saw the posting during my student teaching. I saw the posting, and because it was in the same district where I did my student teaching, and it was where I ended up teaching, for years and years later in Ferguson, Florissant. So I went for it. I applied. I went through all the interviews with all the parents, the principals, the teachers, and got the job. But nobody told me like really why this job was open in January. I was kind of curious that maybe the teacher got pregnant, maybe the teacher had to move, her husband, maybe he was in the military. I don't know. I didn't ask a whole lot of questions. I was just excited to get a job and get paid. So anyway, I got this second grade class and I was super excited and I loved it, in a school called Parker Road Elementary. Now, what happened was, next, as I met Dave, Next door was the first grade class. And so the first grade class teacher got pregnant and had to go on maternity leave. Well, that was Dave's sister's class. She's a first grade teacher in the district. So Dave had just graduated. So Dave takes over for his sister during her maternity leave. So he's there for like 10 weeks. So you have these two guys that have just graduated college. Okay. Just don't know anything about teaching, really. To be honest, you don't know anything about teaching until you start teaching. No matter what you do in school, it doesn't matter. Like you have to learn to teach by teaching. So I'm teaching second grade, 6'3", teaching the second grade. Dave's not as big as me, but he's teaching first grade next door. Okay. We ended up teaching sixth and fifth grade for years, but we were teaching second and first grade at this time. And it was probably like a comedy. I mean, they should have brought in they should have made a sitcom out of this because it was nuts. Every day, like one day, the hamster got loose in my class. We had a hamster. I forgot what his name was. I remember he bit Haley, the girl in my class. She stuck her finger in the cage. I told the kids, don't stick your finger in the cage. She stuck her finger in the cage, bit her. What was his name? Oh my God, I can't remember. It was Snowball because it was white. It was a white hamster. I thought we had to have a class pet. So I got a hamster. One other day, the hamster got loose. Because what we do is we put the hamster in that. Remember, it was like little balls you could put a hamster in and roll around the room. So the kids always got a kick out of it. So during silent reading every day, I'd take that hamster out of the cage, put it in that ball, it'd roll around the room. The rule was, kids, you couldn't kick it. If you kicked it, you're in trouble. Just if he rolls by your desk, just lift up your legs. And so they would. One day we let him out. Totally forgot the hamster was out. He rolled right out of the room, down the hall. He ended up in the office. They had to get on the intercom for the entire school and say if any teacher has lost their class pet, that it is now in the principal's office, and the principal wants to see that said teacher. I was like, oh, great. I totally forgot. So yes, the hamster, because I was not far from the office, and yes, my hamster did make it to the principal's office. Beautiful. I mean, what are the chances? Why couldn't it have gone left? I mean, just gone down towards the art room, or just right out the front door. That'd have saved me a lot of money. Anyway, so that was another thing that happened when I taught second grade, my very first year. That was in 1998. Okay, so but to get to the story, so at the end of the year, this year, we had a big day planned. Okay. So I was super excited. Now I'd already gotten my job, my full-time job. The next year I was leaving Parker Road. I was going to Wedgwood where I'd done my student teaching, and I was teaching sixth grade. I was so pumped because that's what I wanted to teach. And that's where I taught for years. I was going to be teaching with who ended up being my wife next door. Great sixth grade team, super excited. But I knew I was leaving Parker Road. So I was kind of sad. So, but I was not sad to be done with second grade. Second grade was exhausting. I mean, exhausting second grade was. I went home every day by 4:30. I was just out on the couch. It was terrible. I was so tired. They just never stop asking questions in second grade. Horrible. I loved them, but man, it was tiring. Oh, anyway. So at the end of the year, of course, like schools, this is what I was thinking about this, because this time of the year you start kind of missing teaching because it's the fun part of the year. This is a good story to kind of finish the show on, because I was going to keep it to 30 minutes, and here we are at 36. So Dave and I, so one of the things they had in the morning of like 2 or 3 days to go was, instead of a field day, they had this thing where it was the staff versus the sixth graders in a softball game. Okay, so we had a big softball field at the school. And what happened was, of course, I taught second grade, Dave taught first grade, but so, but they needed people to play in the softball game. And of course, they wanted us to play. So we're like, heck yeah, we're going to play. Cause we're like 25. He was like 23. We're going to play softball, and get paid to play softball. This is awesome. So we get up there. Well, the day before I'd gotten a haircut, and back then I used to cut my hair like almost bald. Like I'd almost shave my head because I was playing a lot of hockey at the time, and it was very, I got hot. So because I always had a helmet on. So I pretty much was bald. Well, this was like in May, and it was a super hot day, and I didn't wear a hat because, again, I was teaching. So my head during this softball game that went on way too long. I don't know how the kids didn't like get up and run away, because it was like forever long. Like we killed the sixth graders, by the way, the teachers. Um, we pounded them, but my head got totally sunburned. Okay, my head got just roasted, but I was like, whatever, it's fine. Now later that day, for like our class celebration, I told my kids, I was like, okay, if we meet this certain criteria, I told them like at spring break, I was like, if we do this until the end of the year, you can earn I'll take you to Fritz's Frozen Custard and we'll get ice cream or custard. We'll get frozen custard on this day after the softball game in the afternoon, after lunch. We'll all walk together. We'll walk to the frozen custard place and we'll get ice cream. They're like, yeah, there's the Mr. Rawlman's the best. Yeah. And Dave, so I told Dave, I was like, you need to do that with your class too. So I'm not going by myself. He's like, okay. So he did too. So we had lunch at different times. And so it's the dumbest story. So earlier that morning, my head had gotten roasted playing softball. Now we had lunch, it was like an outdoor lunch that day because it was like field day. So we had like sack lunch and juices and stuff out there. So then after lunch, we clean up and we're heading out. Okay. So for one thing, I didn't realize how far with second graders this Fritz's Frozen Custard was from our school. It wasn't really that far when I'm walking by myself or running. And I wasn't running back then at all. But with second graders, with like 25 second graders, I mean, it could have been 26 miles. It was far. I totally underestimated how long it took us to get there. Here's the other thing. We got there and so everybody, I got everybody's money and all that's a hassle. Because again, this was like 1998. There wasn't like debit cards and stuff like that. The kids were going to have, you weren't prepaying for stuff. You weren't Apple paying anything. So we pay for like, everybody can only get like 3 things. I can get like a chocolate custard. You can get like in a cup, you can get a vanilla custard in a cup, or you can get like a cone. That was like 3 choices. Because they weren't getting like turtles and all that. I wasn't playing that game. So we get up there, get all the ice cream. Of course, okay, it's like 100 degrees by this point because it's like late May. It's a super hot day, super sunny. Like 3 kids slam it real fast and they start feeling sick. I'm like, oh my God, you're kidding me? You're feeling sick already. Okay, so now what am I going to do? Because we got to walk back. And it's like a half-hour walk back. It's not close. So now I, of course, have to have frozen custard. And I think I got like a concrete because I'm the teacher. I can get whatever I want. So I get there. Now we get there before Dave's class. Like we get there, we get our stuff ordered because we don't want to get there at the same time because, 50, 60 people at the same time. They have like 2 people working. We didn't want to overwhelm them. So we get there, get our ice cream first, and then we start heading back. Dave's class gets there as I'm leaving with my class. I'm like, we're going to head back. We'll see you when you get back. So we get about halfway back to the school. We're behind Crest Bowling Alley. I remember we took the shortcut like in front of, because we had to be on sidewalks. So we're through the subdivision, going behind the bowling alley, which is in our town. And I remember I started feeling like super sick. What it was, my head was so sunburned. Like I was like, oh no. And so I had my staff shirt on for the school, and our school colors were like navy blue and white. And it was a navy blue polo. And it was like super hot. My head was super sunburned. And I ended up passing out in like somebody's front yard. Yes. While I was I had 25 second graders with me. Fortunately, I had 2 parents with me. And so I passed out in the front yard of some random person's house. And I remember I was like under a tree. And so what happened was they went up to the front door of these people and they went in and they like let me sit on their front porch. They went and got me like wet towels. And like then I came to, I guess, like I was sitting on the front porch. They called the principal. The principal came and got me. Sharon Norvell, still remember. She came and got me in her like chilled, air-conditioned minivan. And the parents walked back with the rest of the class. And fortunately, one of the parents was a certified teacher. She was just off. She was taught in a different district. So she took the kids back. So thank God for that. But here's the funniest part. So I was ahead of Dave, right? His class, his first graders. So I'm sitting on the front porch of this house with like a cool towel like draped over my sunburned head. And I kind of and I'd pulled off my polo at this point and just had on a white t-shirt under it. And so I just have like on a white t-shirt, like a dripping wet towel over my head, just kind of like sitting on this front porch, random front porch. And so Dave's walking by with his first graders. And so my first grader or my second grader is long gone. They're already moved on. Norvell, the principal, hasn't gotten there yet. So I call out to Dave. I'm like, Dave, because I was like dead, Dave. And I just remember Dave telling his class, he's like, kids, don't look at that man on the front porch. Keep walking. Don't make eye contact. I'm like, Dave, it's Mike. It's Mike. He's like, "Don't look at that man. He's calling at us, but don't look at." I'm like, "Dave Gentili, it's Mike Rallman." He's like, "Oh, what happened to you?" And then I had to explain to him that I'd passed. He's like, "Oh my God, you're kidding me." So yeah, that was one of the funniest, craziest stories that ever happened to me before my real teaching career ever happened. So there you go. Hopefully we can share a laugh today at my expense. So we'll be back again next week. That's Mike in the Midwest. That is Mike from 1998, my very first but many crazy teaching stories. But there it is, the time Mike passed out in the random stranger's front yard when I was teaching second grade on the last day of school. All right, well, hey, share your feedback. What funny stories do you have from your teaching, not teaching, but do you have something that when you started your job, because I love that we all have different jobs, like what's something, give a quick crazy synopsis, a quick crazy story of something you did at your job that was like, I can't believe I did that, because I can't believe that happened. I still can't believe that happened. And I mean, that was over 20 years ago. But I still can't believe it happened. But I'm glad Dave was there because we still laugh about it. So let me know. Be our guest podcast, or sorry, patreon.com/be our guest podcast. But thanks for being here. We can talk more educational toys. If you have more of those, give me some feedback over there. Anything you want to talk about, but feedback is king. I love hearing from you guys over on the Patreon page. But until we get back together again next week, you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and happy Easter. We'll talk to you soon. All righty. See you guys later. It did happen.